Cool. Hello, I'm David Perry. Most of the projects I work on don't have microchips in them. Is anyone else in the same boat? Anybody? Well, if anybody is, I'd love to talk to you. I think we're in the minority. I live here in Portland, Oregon. Thank you all for coming to visit. It's a pretty awesome city. I designed and 3D printed this electric violin. It sounds all right. You'll get to hear it. Thank you. So it was published in March 2014. It became fairly popular, and I pretty quickly found myself in the position of cultivating and managing a community around an open source hardware project. In 2013, right when I was wrapping this up, Michael Weinberg, in his talking in the summit, I was live streaming it, and he said that what we need to do is focus not on licenses, but more on the infrastructure norms, highlights, and rewards within our projects and our communities. So I took that to heart, and I want to share with you what I've done and some things that I learned. Yeah. I clicked it. I pushed it. Okay. Okay. It's printed in 3 parts. There's a neck, there's a rear, there's a bridge, and then there's some guitar parts and strings. There are pickups, and I'll play a song. So what I'm going to play is an Irish tune called Drowsy Maggie. Thanks. All right. So right now in open source hardware, we're pretty niche. There's not a lot of like mainstream knowledge of open source hardware. And it's kind of cool. I kind of like that. But I want to imagine a future where your average person has heard of open source hardware, where products that are out in the market use open source chips and not chips on a more regular basis. The certification that was announced today, that's something that's going to be really useful in that world, in a part as consumer protection and also for norms within the open hardware community. So how do we get from where we are now, I think where most projects fail, not due to licensing, but due to not having engaged communities, how do we get from where we are now to this future where open hardware is common and wonderful? And that's with focus on our communities and on the infrastructure, the norms, and what I'm going to call the feedback mechanisms, which includes highlights and rewards of those communities. So the communities that form, nobody's necessarily paying people. Folks are self-selecting to participate in these projects. And what that means is that they're intrinsically motivated. Their inner desire to participate is causing them to join projects and be in communities. There's a great book by Daniel Pink called Drive, and the 3 elements that really maximize intrinsic motivation are autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So you're going to see those a lot on these slides. Mostly you're going to see them because I want you to remember them. So we'll start with norms. These are expectations of participants in the community, both what maybe I am expecting of participants, as well as what they can expect of me and of others. In the world of 3D printing, at least, this is largely how you do most of your norms. This license isn't great protection, not legal protection, but it lets everybody know kind of what I'm expecting them to do. You'll notice I did say non-commercial, and I had a clause where I said, if you'd like to use this for profit, send me some money, and if you want to use it to market your product, please get in touch. That didn't work. I didn't make any money. I actually lost money from trying to do that. And companies I didn't like still used the fiddle for their advertising. So I will be removing that so that I can apply for the certification, if for no other reason. The other thing that the non-commercial clause does is it prevents some people from joining that community. So I gain nothing and I lose out on I don't know what. Another norm that developed within this community, when I first published the project, I posted a picture of myself playing the instrument. And our communities are connections between people, not connections between objects. So I think it's really important to put the objects in context of the relationship with the person. It just so happened that more people in the community started doing the same thing. You got pictures of folks' kids with their fiddles and others with their cello. And it was a really nice norm within that community. Next, infrastructure. So this is how information travels within and without the community. And by without, I mean between the community and outside. This is kind of like the bones of how everybody's talking to each other and interacting, upon which everything else is built. Again, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. All right. Here's what I did. You can take a closer look at this later, but the main things to note, everything's kind of going back to my website, which was great, because then if I get a backlink from the White House or whoever, that really bumps up my SEO, so I'm trying to start a business, and that's really helpful. One thing that wasn't so great, a lot of people are on Thingiverse. It wasn't the first place I posted files, but a lot of the community is there, and even if you don't want to be somewhere, if that's where your people are, sometimes you have to do that. We had a split, and we had people on Thingiverse, and we had people in the Google group, and these two communities weren't really talking to each other. And that did a couple of things. One, these people lose the opportunity to connect with those people, and two, somebody has to kind of go back and forth to help address issues and encourage and do whatnot, and that somebody is me, where if these two could talk to each other, we'd save a lot of time. So here's a revised infrastructure. The main change here, and I don't know if I would do exactly this, but I'm going back to the website and then not necessarily linking out to a place like Thingiverse, but instead directing everyone to one platform to use for communication. Feedback. So feedback is the information traveling within the community. So we're not talking outside, we're just talking in the community. This is including highlights and rewards, highlights of people's work and reward for the participation. Again, what can we do here to encourage autonomy, mastery, and purpose? So feedback in a project like this includes other people making the instrument. It includes critical emails that I might get. It includes new instruments, other remixes. There are a bunch of different ways that feedback can happen. So there's this cool loop that I noticed, and I think probably most of you might notice this in your projects as well. So let's start in the top right. Public discussion and highlights of others' work engages people outside the community. So that happens. Those people that are engaged, they join your community. Then You give them, or they receive, immediate positive feedback from joining the community. So for me, that looked mostly like me with open arms, being excited that they were there, pointing them in the right direction for what they're trying to do, and offering whatever help I can provide. Those folks, because they get this immediate positive feedback from joining, they're engaged, and they go to contribute. So then there's internal feedback. This is what I get most excited about. You get internal feedback in the way of makes, remixes, and new instruments altogether. Then we discuss, we highlight these things, and you're back to the beginning, where because of that highlighting, because of that discussion, more people are seeing the project, there's more visibility, and you start over. So this is a really cool thing, and it definitely happened. Community members are your customers. I think that's key for me to remember, is that I may be making a product or doing something else that makes me money, but the community members are really the customers when it comes to this project. That's what's going to make this project successful. So mastery can be realized in the pursuit of improving a design. So if you were to take this project, you were to try to change the design to be lighter or more efficient in some way, you might find mastery in the use of some new CAD tool or some CAD tool you already knew. You might find mastery in actually improving the instrument. There are a couple of ways to do that. And you, as the project creator or manager, you can encourage that by leaving some low-hanging fruit. So in the case of this instrument, the bulk of stress in the instrument is taken up by a steel rod. It's really heavy. One of the first makes, instead of a steel rod, he used a carbon fiber rod. So he's able to pretty dramatically improve the instrument without changing the CAD, without having to do anything different with his prints, and he's able to contribute to the project really easily. Another example, not low-hanging fruit, but constraints. The parts are big. There are a lot of smaller printers that can't print these parts. So despite the initial outcry and maybe critical emails that I got, folks pretty quickly took the files, modified them, and then we had things that could be printed on smaller printers. Not only was that work I didn't have to do, but that brings more people into this really active, really engaged community. So low-hanging fruit and constraints. There were, I don't know how many makes, but there were lots of makes. There were quite a number of improvements to the instrument. There were new sizes of violins. There were new instruments altogether, acoustics, cellos. I feel really good about what happened with the project, and it couldn't have happened without this engaged community. In addition, I was able to start a business and support a family and do those things that help me get by so I can start new projects. And that all happened by embracing this infrastructure norms and what's the other one? Feedback mechanisms. And also too, thinking about things in terms of intrinsic motivation. So what can we do as project creators, as project managers, to maximize the intrinsic motivation of members of the community? So I would encourage all of you to, whether you participate in a project, whether you're starting a project, or whether you are managing an existing community, go back, look at what you're doing, look at your community, think about those things, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Think about infrastructure norms and feedback mechanisms, and just be intentional about how that's all set up. There's some things I did for this that I should have done a lot earlier, and I'd like to encourage all of you to do that now so that we can get closer to the future where everybody knows what open source hardware is, and we all have engaged communities. And that way, your project, it can either succeed pretty quickly or it can fail really quickly. Both are super valuable. I think that's it. Thank you.